Captain Thalia straight leaned back in her command chair with the kind of elegant disdain one might reserve for a particularly stubborn stain on their favorite shirt. Her boot, which had seen enough action to write a tragic opera, rested on the console, tapping out a rhythm she could have sworn was Beethoven's Ninth, had she known more than 2 lines of the piece. "Captain," drawled First Officer Jax Ebel, his voice a smooth mix of sarcasm and cigarettes. "I hate to interrupt your deep philosophical contemplation, but we've got a situation." Thalia arched an eyebrow, a maneuver she'd perfected during many a standoff with overzealous customs officials. "Jax, if this is another alien distress signal from the vending machine, I swear I'll space you myself." Jax snorted, his laugh a dry, gravelly thing. "Nah, this time it's legit. Fleet Command just buzzed us with a priority alert. Seems like we've got unwanted guests." Around them, the Zephyr hummed like a loyal mutt eager for action. She wasn't the prettiest ship in the fleet, but if you needed something fixed or broken, she was your girl. Thalia scanned the bridge. Her crew, a collection of misfits, outcasts, and geniuses, were all busily doing what misfits, outcasts, and geniuses do best, making it look like they knew what they were doing. "All right, crew," Thalia announced, her voice cutting through the hum of machinery and muttered swearing. "Party's over." "What have we got, Jax?" Jax's fingers danced over his console, bringing up a display that was equal parts pixelated chaos and alarming statistics. "It's the Zarneth," he said, spitting the name like it left a bad taste in his mouth, which it did, incidentally. "They're hitting the orbital defenses." Thalia felt her stomach drop, like she'd just stepped off a curb into a pit of particularly vindictive quicksand. "Zarneth, huh? I was hoping they were just urban legends like polite space customs agents." "No such luck," Jax replied, tapping the console with a finger that looked like it had been through a meat grinder and come out the other side tougher. "They've got a fleet the size of my ego." "Sounds like we're gonna need a bigger ship," Thalia said dryly, her mind already racing. The bridge crew exchanged glances, the kind shared by people who knew they were about to be knee-deep in proverbial excrement, and were just wondering what flavor it would be this time. "We need to get to the ring," Thalia decided, the authoritative snap in her voice cutting through the bridge like a well-thrown dagger. "If they take down the defense grid, Earth'll be as defenseless as a kitten in a vacuum. And twice as dead," Jax added helpfully, ever the optimist. "Thanks, Jax," Thalia muttered. "Real morale booster, you are." As they prepped the Zephyr for what was sure to be a less than leisurely jaunt through hostile space, Thalia took a moment to consider her crew. There was the usual spread of faces. Jackson, the engineer who treated the ship like a beloved yet temperamental grandmother. Zara, the tactical officer who'd once been kicked out of the Navy for looking too smug during battle. And of course, Jax, whose past was as murky as the contents of a spaceport bar dumpster. Each of them was here because, frankly, no one else would have them. And that was just how Thalia liked it. "All right, kids," she said, her voice a mix of command and camaraderie. "Let's go see if we can't irritate some aliens. Remember, Zarneth ships are tough, but so are hangovers, and we've all beaten those." "Yeah, but hangovers don't shoot back," Zara pointed out, checking the targeting systems like she was planning a particularly tricky robbery. "Depends on what you drank," Thalia replied with a grin that could cut glass. As the Zephyr broke orbit, the alien fleet came into view. Ship after ship filled the screen, each one a perfect example of why interstellar diplomacy needed better funding. "They're lining up to take down the defense platforms," Jax reported, his voice as calm as the eye of a hurricane. "If they pull it off, we'll be having this conversation somewhere a lot less friendly." "Okay, people," Thalia said, taking a deep breath. "Let's show these aliens why it's a bad idea to mess with the species that invented caffeine and sarcasm. And reality TV," Zara added. "Exactly," Thalia said, then paused. "Wait, maybe they deserve to win." The Zephyr surged forward, engines roaring defiantly into the void. Around them, the Zarneth ships moved with a precision that was almost mechanical, like some kind of unfeeling swarm. "Incoming fire," Zara called out, her fingers flying over the controls with a speed that suggested there might be a few stimulants involved. The ship shook as the first volley slammed into them, the hull groaning like a pensioner getting out of bed. "Shields holding," Jackson reported, his voice vibrating with the kind of tension only an engineer could manage. "Good," Thalia said, gritting her teeth. "Let's see how they like a taste of their own medicine." Zara grinned, and the weapons system lit up like a particularly festive tree at a funeral. The Zephyr fired back, a stream of bright energy carving a line through the blackness of space. "Direct hit," Zara confirmed, the satisfaction in her voice a bomb against the chaos around them. "Nice shot," Thalia said. "Remind me to give you a raise if we survive." "You don't pay me," Zara reminded her. "Exactly," Thalia replied. "It's the thought that counts." They danced through the battle, the Zephyrs crew a symphony of snark and skill. Each maneuver was a calculated risk, each decision a potential last. "We need to draw them away from the defense grid," Thalia said. "Suggestions? How about we moon them?" Jax suggested. "Tempting," Thalia replied, "but maybe something a little less likely to get us vaporized." "We could use the old trick," Zara said, a wicked gleam in her eye. "You mean the pretend we're out of fuel and then blast them when they get close trick?" Thalia asked. "Precisely," Zara confirmed, her fingers already setting the trap. The Zephyr drifted, engines cutting to a low hum. The Zarneth, seeing a seemingly crippled ship, began to converge like a pack of wolves eyeing a wounded deer. "Steady," Thalia murmured, her eyes fixed on the enemy. "Let them get nice and cozy." The tension on the bridge was palpable, and for a moment everything seemed to hang in a delicate balance. Then all at once the Zephyr roared back to life, unleashing a barrage of firepower that painted the void with the glow of destruction. "Got them!" Zara shouted, her voice triumphant. "We need to move," Jax warned, his eyes on the incoming enemy ships. "They won't fall for that twice." "Right," Thalia agreed, her mind a whirlwind of plans and contingencies. "Let's make ourselves scarce." With a deftness born of desperation and no small amount of talent, the Zephyr twisted away, engines straining against the force of inertia and enemy fire. "Nice work," Thalia said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Don't worry," Jax replied. "I'll put it on my resume. Survived an alien onslaught without losing lunch." "We're not out of the woods yet," Thalia reminded him, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. "Wouldn't be fun if we were," Jax shot back. As the Zephyr ducked and weaved, Thalia allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. Against all odds, they were holding their own. But in the back of her mind, the weight of the situation lingered. They were just one ship against a fleet, and Earth's defenses were only as strong as their weakest link. "New contact," Zara announced, a note of urgency in her voice. "More Zarneth?" Thalia asked, bracing for another round. "No," Zara replied, her eyes wide. "Something else." Thalia cursed under her breath. Great, because things weren't complicated enough already. As the new ship came into view, Thalia's heart sank. It was massive, dwarfing even the largest of the Zarneth vessels, and it was heading straight for them. "Looks like the universe just can't get enough of us," Jax quipped, but there was a tightness in his voice that spoke volumes. "All hands," Thalia ordered, her voice a whip crack of command. "Prepare for whatever the hell that is." As the hulking shadow loomed closer, Thalia realized one thing. They were in for one hell of a fight. The Zephyr's bridge was a mess of controlled chaos as the crew scrambled to analyze the new threat. Monitors flashed urgent red warnings, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of burning circuits, like a barbecue gone horribly wrong. Captain Thalia Strait stood at the center, the crew's chaotic energy orbiting her like caffeinated planets. "All right, folks," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a buzz saw through butter. "Let's figure out what exactly is about to ruin our day." First Officer Jax Ebel snorted, leaning against his console with a laziness that belied the tension in his eyes. As if a bigger ship wasn't enough of a hint. "Maybe it's a welcoming committee. You know, with tea and exploding crumpets. Real comforting, Jax. Remind me why I keep you around again." Thalia asked, sarcasm laced with just enough camaraderie to keep things light. Because without me, you'd spend your days arguing with vending machines. Jax shot back, a grin playing on his lips. Before Thalia could retort, the bridge door slid open to reveal Rin Jace, the ship's tech genius. He looked like he just crawled out of a maintenance shaft, which, knowing him, he probably had. His wild hair was a testament to his disdain for anything resembling a comb. Rin, tell me you've got some brilliant insight into these oversized tin cans, Thalia implored. Rin settled into his chair, fingers a blur over the console. Oh, I've got insights, all right. That ship out there. It's not Zarneth Tech, he announced, eyes flicking up to meet hers, a mischievous glint within them. Not Zarneth, Thalia asked, surprised. So what is it then? A cosmic delivery truck. Vera Quell, the seasoned tactician who often seemed to have war strategies running through her veins instead of blood, finally spoke up. Not quite. I've seen something like this before. Old tech cobbled together from various sources. A patchwork, if you will. Jax raised an eyebrow. So they're not as unified as they look exactly, Rin confirmed. And the Zarneth themselves, well, they're about as adaptable as a brick in a sandstorm. Thalia nodded slowly, her mind racing. So they've got strength in numbers and firepower, but they are as nimble as a drunk space cow, pretty much, Rin smirked. Take away their ability to coordinate and they'll crumble like a cheap space pastry, which means we need to hit their communication lines, Vera said, her eyes narrowing with predatory intent. Jax chuckled darkly. What, you want us to start prank calling them? Close, Thalia mused. We interrupt their signals, make them think twice about their next move. Without orders, they'll be floundering. The air on the bridge shifted, the crew trading glances that underscored their shared understanding. They were up against a massive threat, but now they had a sliver of hope, a way to turn the tide. We've got our work cut out for us, Thalia said, determination hardening her voice. And just in case we forget, they've got enough firepower to turn us into space confetti. Jax shrugged, a lazy smile curling his lips. I've always loved a good fireworks display. Let's just make sure we're the ones lighting the fuse, Thalia shot back. Rin continued to work his magic on the console, hacking into the enemy's systems. His muttering was a constant stream of technical jargon and colorful expletives that would have made a sailor blush. Their encryption is tighter than a miser's purse strings, but nothing I can't handle. Keep at it, Rin. We need those ventilation shafts of theirs wide open, Thalia encouraged, watching as the information slowly unraveled on the screen. In the dimly lit bridge, the tension was almost a tangible thing, weaving between the crew like a snake ready to strike. They were all too aware of the stakes. Morale check, Thalia called out, glancing at her crew. Let's hear it. Jackson, the engineer, grinned like a kid who'd gotten away with something mischievous. Still here, still kicking. What more could we want? Maybe a dinner where the main course isn't plasma fire, Vera quipped, her tone dry and cutting. Unlikely, Jackson replied, tapping his console. But I suppose miracles do happen. Thalia nodded, proud of her ragtag team. All right then. Let's see if we can't pull a miracle out of our collective hat, shall we? Rin suddenly let out a triumphant whoop. Got it. Their comms are yours. The crew erupted in cheers, a brief moment of celebration amid the chaos. But Thalia's mind was already on the next step. Okay, folks, she said, clapping her hands together. Let's send those Zarneth bastards a message they won't forget. Jax leaned in, his voice laced with humor and a tinge of menace. Something like, we regret to inform you that your invasion has been postponed indefinitely. Please hold while we transfer your call to the nearest black hole. Sounds about right, Thalia replied, her grin as sharp as a knife. Let's make it happen. As the Zephyr danced through the chaos, its crew worked in perfect harmony, a symphony of defiance and snark. Each maneuver was a testament to their grit, each decision a calculated risk in the grand game of survival. The alien fleet loomed large, an ever-present reminder of the odds they faced. But as Rin's hack took hold, the Zarneth began to falter. Ships drifted without direction, their precision slipping like sand through fingers. "They're getting twitchy," Vera observed, her eyes glued to the tactical display. "This could be our chance. Let's not waste it," Thalia replied, her voice a whipcrack of authority. "Target their lead ship and hit them hard." Zara, at the weapons console, grinned with a manic glee. "With pleasure, Captain. Let's show them what happens when you poke the bear." As the Zephyr opened fire, the void lit up with the bright, violent glow of destruction. The lead Zarneth ship took the brunt of the assault, its shields flickering like a candle in a gale. "They're struggling," Jax noted with satisfaction. "Looks like someone didn't read the manual." Thalia allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. Against all odds, they were making a difference. "Keep it up," she urged, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We're not done yet. The Zarneth may have had numbers and firepower, but the Zephyr had something far more potent. A crew that refused to back down, even in the face of certain death." As the battle raged on, the bridge was alive with the sounds of war, blaring alerts, shouted commands, the ever-present hum of the ship's engines. Through it all, the crew fought with every ounce of their being. "New wave incoming," Zara warned, her fingers dancing over the controls like a virtuoso. "Brace for impact." The ship shuddered violently as the Zarneth returned fire, the hull groaning with the strain. But the crew held their ground, united in purpose and defiance. "They're bringing the heat," Jax muttered, his voice edged with dark humor. "Must have missed the memo about us being uninviting. Let's make sure they regret it," Thalia replied, her resolve ironclad. With Rin's hack continuing to disrupt the enemy, the odds began to tip in their favor. The Zarneth's lack of adaptability was becoming painfully clear, a weakness the Zephyr's crew was all too eager to exploit. "Focus fire on their engines," Vera commanded, her tactical instincts sharp and unerring. "Let's see if we can't slow them down." The Zephyr's weapons blazed a trail of destruction, systematically targeting key points on the enemy vessels. As the Zarneth ships began to falter, the crew pressed their advantage, relentless and unyielding. "They're scrambling," Jax reported, a note of triumph in his voice. "Looks like they finally realized we're not just a minor inconvenience." Thalia grinned, exhilaration sparking through her. "Let's remind them why humanity's not to be underestimated." As the battle reached a fever pitch, the Zephyr pushed forward, a beacon of defiance in the dark. The Zarneth were powerful, but they lacked the one thing that had kept humanity going through the darkest times: the ability to think on their feet and adapt. "Keep pushing," Thalia urged, her voice a rallying cry. "We're not out of the woods yet." Despite the odds, the crew's determination never wavered. They fought for every inch, every second, their resolve as unbreakable as the hull that carried them. "Keep it up, people," Thalia said, her voice a blend of command and encouragement. "We're almost there." With each passing moment, the tide of battle shifted further in their favor. The Zarneth, once an unstoppable force, now floundered amidst the chaos, their cohesion shattered by ingenuity and a dangerous dose of human resilience. As the enemy fleet began to retreat, the crew allowed themselves a moment of cautious optimism. They'd won a battle, but the war was far from over. "We did it," Jax said, disbelief in his voice. "Didn't think we'd last 5 minutes, let alone win." Thalia nodded, though her eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. "We still have a long way to go. But for now, enjoy the victory." The crew shared weary smiles, the weight of what they'd achieved beginning to sink in. They were battle-worn and battered, yet unbroken. As the Zephyr slipped through the remnants of the enemy fleet, Thalia took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges that lay ahead. They'd bought time, but the real fight was just beginning. "All right, crew," she said, her voice steady and resolute. "Let's get the hell out of here and regroup. We've got work to do." With that, the Zephyr turned away from the battlefield, its crew battered but not beaten. They'd faced the odds and come out swinging, but the universe was a vast and unforgiving place. And out there, lurking in the shadows, The next challenge awaited. But if the Zarneth or anyone else thought they'd roll over, they were in for a rude awakening. Because no matter the odds, the Zephyr and its crew would never back down. The Zephyr wasn't just limping away from the battlefield. It was doing a damn fine impression of a drunken sailor trying not to fall off a curb. The ship's engine sputtered, protesting the abuse they'd just suffered and the bruising they were sure to get again soon. Thalia Straight sat in the captain's chair, looking like she was trying to solve a three-dimensional puzzle with half the pieces missing, and most of those pieces being on fire. "Well, that was invigorating," Jax Ebel drawled, sauntering up beside Thalia with the kind of relaxed swagger that suggested he either didn't understand the concept of danger or just didn't care anymore. "Any chance we can pencil in not dying on the agenda for the rest of the day?" Thalia snorted, her eyes glued to the chaotic dance of red warnings on the monitors. "Sure, right after avoid spontaneous combustion and outsmart insurmountable odds. But first we need a new plan. Suggestions. How about we surrender to our impending doom and call it a day?" Jax offered with a lazy grin. Rin Jace popped his head out from beneath a console, grease streaked across his cheek like war paint. "You could always let me take a nap." "I hear sleep deprivation is the new strategy in modern warfare." "Noted," Thalia replied dryly. "Next brilliant idea." Viraquel, ever the tactician, crossed her arms, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "We need allies. Someone with more guns, bigger ships, and a suicidal streak to match Ior's." "Ah yes, the classic make friends with the craze's tactic," Jax chuckled. "Always a winner. Better than sitting here with our thumbs up our thrusters," Rin muttered, pulling himself out from under the console. "Any ideas on where to find these trigger-happy comrades?" "Orbital rings got a few factions," Vera noted, her finger tracing a path on the tactical map. "Most of them hate each other more than they hate us, but there's a couple who'd appreciate a chaos-loving partner." Thalia nodded, a spark of hope flickering to life. "All right, let's see if we can rustle up some company. Maybe someone's crazy enough to join this party." With engines protesting every light year of the way, the Zephyr made its way towards the orbital ring, a haphazard collection of outposts that functioned like a cosmic game of chicken, each faction trying to see who could get closest without actually colliding. It wasn't much, but it was home to the kind of opportunistic scoundrels who thrived in chaos. Just the kind of people Thalia was hoping to enlist. "Brace yourselves, we're about to enter the diplomatic zone," Jax remarked, sarcastically tugging at his collar in mock formality. "And by diplomatic, I mean don't shoot unless they shoot first." "That's as diplomatic as it gets out here," Vera quipped. Thalia cracked a smile despite herself. "First contact protocols, stay sarcastic, keep one hand on the trigger." "Words to live by," Rin agreed, adjusting his tool belt like a gunslinger ready for a showdown. The Zephyr slid into the orbital ring, its appearance less of a grand entrance and more of a stuttering arrival. The ship's hull was marked with scorch marks and dents, badges of honor in this lawless sector. As they maneuvered through the densely packed array of stations, Thalia opened a channel to one of the more reputable groups, the Iron Claw. "This is Captain Thalia Straight of the Zephyr, requesting a chat with whoever's in charge. We come in peace or something resembling it." A crackling reply filled the bridge, a gruff voice dripping with suspicion. "Iron Claw here. Why should we talk to you?" "Your ship looks like it's been through the ringer." "Because we're the only ones with an anti-Zarneth plan that doesn't involve hiding under a rock," Thalia shot back. "And we're fresh out of rocks." A pause, then a bark of laughter. "All right, Zephyr. Bring your shoddy ship in and let's have a look at you." "You know," Jax mused as the Zephyr docked, "this is either going to be a stroke of genius or the worst idea since unsliced bread." "I'm banking on genius," Thalia replied, standing up and smoothing her uniform. "Let's go make friends." The docking bay was a chaotic mess of activity, smuggling operations juxtaposed with legitimate trade. Thalia led her crew through the throng, eyes peeled for any sign of treachery. It wasn't paranoia if the universe really was out to get you. They were met by the Iron Claw's leader, a mountain of a man named Garrick, whose beard alone was intimidating enough to serve as a weapon. He eyed them with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Captain Straight," Garrick rumbled, his voice like gravel in a blender. "You look like hell. Feels like it too," Thalia replied with a smirk. "Heard you might be interested in putting the Zarneth on the back foot." Garrick huffed, his interest piqued. "What have you got that we don't?" "Rin, show him," Thalia prompted, nodding to her tech genius. Rin pulled out a holographic device and displayed the hacked Zarneth communications. "We've got access to their channels. They're scrambled right now thanks to my handiwork, but it won't last." "And what do you propose we do with this little advantage?" Garrick asked, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "We hit them before they regroup," Vera interjected. "Your fleet, our intel. A combined force should be enough to make them think twice." Garrick chuckled, a deep, rolling sound. "You've got guts, Captain, I like that. All right, Iron Claws in. But no double crosses, understood." "Wouldn't dream of it," Thalia assured, though her smile was just sharp enough to keep Garrick on his toes. Back on the Zephyr, the crew felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Iron Claw fleet was assembling, and with their combined might, they were ready to take on the Zarneth once more. Only this time they had a plan and a few new allies. "So," Jack said, leaning back in his chair with a grin, "we're not dead yet. That's a promising start." "Don't get too comfortable," Vera warned with a smirk. "The real fun's just beginning." Rin shook his head, muttering, "Fun, right. Remind me to redefine that word later." As the Zephyr powered up, Thalia addressed her crew. "We've got a chance here, people. A real shot at turning the tide. Let's make it count." The crew responded with a chorus of affirmatives, their spirits lifted by the prospect of action rather than waiting for the inevitable. With the Iron Claw fleet at their side, the Zephyr set course for the Zarneth forces. The plan was simple: hit them hard and fast before they could re-establish their communication lines. In theory, it was brilliant. In practice, it was suicidal, but then, that had never stopped them before. As they approached the Zarneth, Thalia felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, a reminder of why she'd taken the captain's chair in the first place. This was her domain, where chaos met strategy and the odds were just another challenge to overcome. The Zephyr and Iron Claw ships moved in formation, a ragtag fleet that was more heart than polish, but sometimes heart was all you needed. "Contacts on the radar," Vera announced, her tone clipped but excited. "They're mobilizing." "Let's give them a proper welcome," Thalia ordered, her eyes gleaming with resolve. "All ships engage." The void erupted with the fury of battle, a chaotic blend of laser fire and explosions. The Zarneth had recovered quicker than expected, but they still hesitated, their coordination lacking due to the scrambled comms. Rin worked feverishly at his console, maintaining their advantage. "Their systems are a mess, but they are adapting." "Give me a minute to throw a wrench in their works." "Minute's all you've got," Thalia replied, her focus unwavering. "Make it count." The Zephyr weaved through the enemy ranks, its weapons blazing. The Iron Claw ships followed suit, their captain's orders carried out with precision and a touch of madness. As the battle raged on, Thalia couldn't help but feel a certain grim satisfaction. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but not outsmarted. Adaptability was their greatest weapon, and they wielded it with a ferocity that matched any Zarneth war machine. Jax laughed as a Zarneth ship veered off course, its systems overloaded by Rin's interference. "Look at them go, like space drunkards at a no-gravity bar crawl." Vera smirked, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Keep the pressure on. Let them know we're not backing down." The tide of battle shifted, the Zarneth struggling to regain control. For every ship they managed to stabilize, two more fell into disarray, the human fleet capitalizing on their confusion. Rin grinned triumphantly. Their network's one spark short of a meltdown, should keep them busy for a while. "Good work," Thalia praised, her heart pounding with the thrill of the fight. With their enemies in disarray, the human forces pressed the advantage, striking with a precision born from desperation and determination. Slowly but surely, the Zarneth line broke, their ships retreating under the relentless assault. "We're pushing them back," Jax reported, a note of awe in his voice. "Didn't think it was possible." "It's always possible," Thalia replied, her gaze fierce and unwavering. "You just have to be crazy enough to try." As the last of the Zarneth ships withdrew, the Zepha's crew exchanged weary, triumphant smiles. They'd done it against all odds. But as they regrouped and prepared for the next steps, one thing was clear: this was only the beginning. "Enjoy the victory while it lasts," Thalia advised, her voice steady despite the chaos they'd just endured. "The universe has a way of throwing curveballs." Jax chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Then let's hope our aim's as good as our luck." The Zepha and its newfound allies turned away from the battlefield, ready to face whatever came next. They'd proven that humanity wasn't to be underestimated, but there was still a long road ahead. And as long as they had each other, they'd keep fighting, keep adapting, no matter what the universe threw at them. The Zepha hummed with a tension as tangible as the grime under Rin's fingernails, the kind of tension that made even the recycled air taste like desperation. The crew had just pulled off a miracle, but the universe, being the cruel mistress she was, wasn't done with them yet. Jax was lounging in his chair on the bridge, feet propped up on the console like he owned the place. "So, we've kicked the Zarneth up the proverbial backside. What's next? Drinks? Nap?" Thalia shot him a look that could have melted asteroids. "We wish. But Fleet Command's buzzing like a hornet's nest, and it's not 'cause they're happy. Zarneth have started eyeing the orbital ring like it's their next conquest." "Great," Vera said dryly, crossing her arms. "Just when I thought our day couldn't get any worse." Thalia rubbed her temples as if she could squeeze out some patience. "We've got to warn the other human factions. If the Zarneth hit the right segments, they'll cripple our entire defense system." Rin, who had been tinkering with a panel that sparkled more than it should, glanced up. "And how exactly do we convince the rest that we're not just a bunch of lunatics with a death wish?" "Charm, wit, and a bit of luck," Thalia replied. "So in other words, we're screwed." "Speaking of screwed," Jax piped in, his grin wide enough to rival a black hole, "any more surprises we should account for? Maybe a crew member secretly working for the Zarneth. Wouldn't that be just peachy?" Rin rolled his eyes. "If anyone's working for them, they'd need a serious raise. We're barely keeping the lights on as it is." Vera edged closer to Thalia, lowering her voice. "You know you joke about betrayal, but I've seen a few skeptical looks thrown around. Some of the crew are losing faith." Thalia's jaw tightened. "In the middle of this mess, damn it, we can't afford mutiny on top of everything else." Jax shrugged, leaning back with infuriating ease. "Maybe they just need a pep talk. Or a reminder that the alternative to sticking with us is a Zarneth boarding party." Vera chuckled humorlessly. "Yeah, nothing boosts morale like imminent death." Before Thalia could respond, the ship's comms crackled to life, an unwelcome croak in the storm of chaos. "Captain Straight, this is Garrick from the Iron Claw. We've got eyes and ears picking up Zarneth movements. They're planning something big." "Perfect. Just what I needed," Thalia muttered, jabbing the comm button. "Thanks for the update, Garrick. We're figuring out how to rain on their parade." "Just make sure it's a hell of a storm, Captain," Garrick replied. "Iron Claw won't back a lost cause." The line went dead, leaving an uneasy silence that hung like a guillotine blade. Thalia turned to her crew, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of dread. "Okay, folks. We need to warn the other factions and get them to coordinate before the Zarneth hit. Rin, I need you to patch into the ring's network. Jax and Vera, prep for a meeting with the faction leaders. We're selling them salvation, and they better damn well buy it." Jax tipped an imaginary hat. "Roger that, Captain. Let's go dazzle them with our silver tongues." As the crew moved to their tasks, Thalia felt the weight of command press down like a dead star. Anyone could lead in times of peace, but it took a special kind of lunacy to do it when the galaxy was falling apart. The orbital ring was a patchwork quilt of human stubbornness, a series of stations that clung to the void like barnacles on a sinking ship. The Zepha docked with a shudder, its hull protesting every moment of the journey. Thalia led her crew through the corridors, the path flickering with half-functional lights that hadn't seen maintenance since the last millennium. With every step, she felt eyes on her, some curious, others suspicious. The kind of eyes that made you check your pockets after brushing past. They reached the meeting chamber, a grim assembly of representatives from various factions. Some looked as though they hadn't left their stations in decades, others appeared fresh from a battlefield. Trust was as scarce here as good intentions. Captain Straight, a thin man in the front, spoke, his voice as dry as a desert breeze. "You've called us here for a reason, I hope." Thalia nodded. "The Zarneth are targeting key segments of the ring. If they succeed, Earth's defenses will be crippled." Another representative, a woman with a face that could sigh or milk, raised an eyebrow. "And you suggest we trust your ragtag crew to lead our course?" Jax, ever the diplomat, stepped forward with a grin. "Ragtag? That's a bit generous, isn't it, Captain?" Thalia smirked. "We may not have your polish, but we've got the intel and the plan to back it up. The Zarneth's using the chaos out there to slip through our defenses. We've got to hit them where it hurts first." A murmur rippled through the assembled crowd, a blend of skepticism and reluctant interest. Thalia could feel the precarious balance of support teetering on a knife's edge. Vera stepped in, her voice calm and authoritative. "We're not asking you to follow blindly. We're offering you the chance to strike back. Coordinate a defense, hit their supply lines, disrupt their communication." Disrupt their communication, huh? The thin man scratched his chin thoughtfully. "And what's to stop them from simply overwhelming us with numbers?" Rin, who had been silently working at a terminal, spoke up. "Their numbers don't matter if they are running blind. We've scrambled their main channels and can feed them misinformation." The room was silent, tension crackling like static in the air. It was a gamble, a desperate bid for survival, and everyone knew it. Finally, the sire-faced woman nodded slowly. "All right, Captain Straight, we'll join your little crusade. But know this, failure will mean more than just defeat. It'll mean the end of everything we hold dear." Thalia nodded, her resolve as unyielding as the void beyond. "Then let's not fail." Back on the Zephyr, the atmosphere was no less charged. The crew had been briefed, the factions informed, and now they were in the calm before the storm. The kind of calm that made you wish for ear-splitting chaos just to break the tension. Thalia was in her quarters, staring at the reports with a gaze that could freeze plasma. She didn't hear Jax enter until he flopped onto her couch with all the grace of a collapsing star. "So, what's the plan, Captain? Besides not dying, of course." Thalia sighed, closing the reports. "We coordinate with the faction fleets, hit the Zarneth where they least expect it. But first we need to make sure everyone's on the same page." "Not just that," Jax said, his tone shifting from playful to serious. "We've got dissent in the ranks, remember. Some of the crew's been acting off since we docked." "I noticed," Thalia admitted, the weight of leadership never far from her shoulders. "We need to nip that in the bud before it becomes a problem." "I'll talk to them," Jax offered. "See if I can't figure out who's got a foot in the Zarneth camp." Thalia arched an eyebrow. "You think we've got a traitor?" Jax shrugged, a careless motion that belied the gravity of the situation. "Paranoia's a survival trait out here. Better safe than ambushed." Thalia nodded, a silent agreement passing between them. "Do it. We can't afford another surprise." As Jax left to play detective, Thalia returned to her reports. The universe was a big place, and it was full of bastards, but she'd be damned if she let them win. Later, Jax found himself in the crew's common area, a dingy room full of half-broken chairs and the smell of burnt coffee. He leaned against the wall, watching the crew mill about with the casual air of a man at a bar, rather than a military operation. "Gather round, kids," he announced, clapping his hands. "Story time with Uncle Jax." A few chuckles rippled through the group, but the mood was tense, the crew's unease palpable. "We're all friends here, right?" Jax continued, his voice light but eyes sharp. "So why am I hearing whispers of doubt? Cold feet aren't going to win us this war." A burly engineer, arms crossed defensively, met Jax's gaze. It's not cold feet, Jax. It's realism. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and betting on a long shot. Jax nodded, his expression thoughtful. True, but realism also says the Zarneth don't play nice. What's the alternative? Running? Hiding? Another crew member spoke up, a young woman with an edge to her voice. There's talk that someone's been feeding info to the wrong side. Makes it hard to trust when you're watching your back. Jax's eyes narrowed, his smile fading. And who's spreading this charming little rumor? Silence, the kind that stretched to breaking point. The crew exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Look, Jax said, his voice dropping to a more serious tone, we're all in this together. Trust is all we've got. If there's a rat, we'll find them. But until then, keep your heads on straight. We've got a job to do and Captain Straight's counting on us. The crew nodded, some hesitantly, others with renewed determination. Jax knew he hadn't solved the problem, but maybe he'd bought them some time. Back in the bridge, Thalia was coordinating with the other factions, her voice a steady anchor amidst the chaos. The Zephyr was ready, the crew was as prepared as they'd ever be, and the plan was set. Now, all they needed was for luck to be on their side for once. Final checks, she ordered, her voice cutting through the chatter. Let's make sure our little surprise party isn't a bust. As the crew scrambled to their stations, Thalia felt the gravity of the moment settle on her. They were betting everything on this audacious plan, and the stakes couldn't be higher. All systems go, Rin reported, his fingers dancing over his console like a pianist hammering out a tune of doom. Faction fleets are in position, Vera added, her expression a blend of grim determination and excitement. Ready when you are, Captain. Thalia took a moment, letting the tension coil and release, a spring ready to launch. All ships on my mark. Let's remind the Zarneth why humans have a reputation for being tenacious little bastards. With a resolve that could bend steel, Thalia gave the order to engage. The Zephyr, along with its unlikely allies, surged forward to meet the Zarneth threat head-on. In the cold expanse of space, amidst the chaos and the fire, the battle for survival began anew. Thalia knew that betrayal and doubt lingered close, but she also knew that sometimes, all it took to tip the scales was a crew crazy enough to defy the odds. And on this day, crazy was something they had in spades. The Zephyr shuddered like an old man trying to get out of bed, every part creaking in protest as it coasted through the debris-filled void. Captain Thalia Strait, the closest thing this ship had to a heart, was staring intently at the main display. It was a mass of swirling red warnings, a digital representation of a migraine. She could almost hear the computer wheezing with exhaustion. Well, this is a dumpster fire, Jax Ebel quipped, lounging in his seat as if they weren't about to be turned into cosmic confetti. Our little surprise attack blew up in our faces, huh? More like detonated, Thalia muttered, scanning for any signs of immediate threat. We need to buy some time and get these systems back online. From somewhere under the console, Rin Jace's voice echoed up with the quality of someone who'd swallowed too much engine grease. Just say the word. I'll tickle the power conduits until they sing. Make sure they're singing something upbeat, Thalia replied dryly, like we're not dead yet. Viraquel rolled her eyes, her fingers dancing over her tactical display. I'd settle for staying alive at this point. We're sitting ducks if we don't get mobility back. Or even just a quack, Jax chimed in, unable to resist the low-hanging fruit. Thalia ignored him with the seasoned patience of a mother dealing with her hyperactive children. Rin, focus on propulsion. Vera, I need comms back. If we're cut off, the rest of the fleet might as well be on the other side of the universe. Vera nodded, her usual cynicism replaced by grim determination. On it, but the comms array looks like it was flung through a meat grinder. Fantastic, Thalia groaned. Just when you think things can't get worse, the universe finds a way to prove you wrong. Jax, ever the optimist, leaned back and folded his arms. Hey, at least no one's tried to sell us extended warranties on our engines yet. Give it time, Thalia replied. If we live through this, I'm sure some bastard will be waiting with a clipboard. The Zephyr drifted in the void, a wounded beast in a forest of metallic predators. From his makeshift workspace in the bowels of the ship, Rin was trying to coax life back into the propulsion systems, a task akin to convincing a corpse to jog. "Come on, sweetheart," he murmured to the unresponsive circuits, hands moving with the delicate care of a surgeon. "You don't want to die in this trash heap, do you?" The ship, unsurprisingly, didn't answer. Instead, a shower of sparks erupted, singeing his eyebrows and adding another layer of grime to his already battle-worn face. "Thanks for the feedback," Rin grumbled, wiping sweat and soot from his eyes. "Always nice to know you care." Jax's voice crackled over the intercom, laced with its usual sarcasm. "Rin, how's it going down there? We're all eager to hear the good news." Rin huffed, adjusting his grip on the tools. "Which part?" "The part where I'm one circuit away from a nervous breakdown, or the bit where the engines are stuck in existential crisis mode." "How about the part where you tell me we're not doomed?" Jax suggested. "Well, if I can make the engines believe in themselves again, we might have a fighting chance," Rin replied, his fingers deftly reconnecting wires with the speed of desperation. Jax laughed. "Consider this your motivational speech, then. You're our only hope, Obi-Wan." "Yeah, because pop culture references are really going to save us," Rin retorted, rolling his eyes. Meanwhile, back on the bridge, Thalia was pacing a groove into the floor as Vera fought with the communication systems. The panels flickered like a broken disco ball, erratic and useless. "I swear these circuits are held together with duct tape and prayer," Vera muttered, her voice tight with concentration. "Then pray harder because we're running out of duct tape," Thalia replied, watching the tactical readouts warily. The Zarneth ships were regrouping, circling like vultures. "Just once I'd like to be the one doing the circling," Vera grumbled, yanking a stubborn wire free and replacing it with a salvaged part. "Next time, I promise," Thalia said, though they both knew promises on a battlefield were worth less than a politician's handshake. The lights above them flickered and died, plunging the bridge into momentary darkness before emergency lighting kicked in. The red hue bathed the room in a sinister glow, as if underscoring their precarious position. "That's just great," Vera sighed. "Now we look like a haunted ghost ship." "Should we start moaning and rattling chains?" "Only if it'll scare the Zarneth away," Thalia replied, tapping her foot impatiently. "But knowing our luck, they probably find ghosts quaint." Ior's felt like days as Rin wrestled with the stubborn engines. Sweat dripped from his brow, mixing with the grime. His hands were a mess of cuts and bruises, each one a testament to the ship's defiant refusal to play nice. Finally, with a triumphant shout, a low hum began to vibrate through the hull, a sound that was both ancient and powerful. The engines came to life, a reluctant beast roused from slumber. "Jax," Rin said, breathless with a mix of relief and exhaustion, "tell the captain we've got propulsion back. The engines are purring like a dragon with a toothache, but they're purring." Jax punched the air, his grin wide. "You hear that, Captain? We've got a few more Iors to live." "Good," Thalia replied over the intercom, her voice steadier than she felt. "Now let's see if we can make those Iors count." While the Zephyr limped back into motion, Vera continued her battle with the comms. Sweat dripped onto her sleeves as she bypassed fried circuits and rerouted power from systems that were currently less critical, like the coffee machine. "Who needs caffeine when you've got adrenaline?" she muttered to herself, teeth gritted in determination. Finally, with a flicker and a burst of static, the comms array sputtered back to life, coughing out half-formed words like a drunk after a particularly rough night. "Captain," Vera announced, her voice ringing with triumph, "we've got comms." Thalia's relief was palpable. "Patch us through to the fleet." "Let's light up this dark void." Vera worked her magic, fingers flying over the controls. A moment later, the scratchy yet recognizable voice of Fleet Command crackled through the speakers. "Zephyr, this is Fleet Command. We were beginning to think you'd gone for a long nap." "Not quite the eternal rest yet," Thalia replied, unable to resist a grim smile. "Glad to hear your voice, Command. We've got propulsion back and are getting the hell out of Dodge. Stay in formation and prepare for a coordinated strike. We're going to hit the Zarneth before they regroup. Roger that. We're on our way. Vera slapped the console in satisfaction, the comms display finally showing stable signals. Looks like we're back in business. Thalia nodded, allowing herself a moment of pride in her crew. All right, people, let's not get cocky. We've pulled ourselves out of this nosedive, but the fight's not over yet. As the Zephyr rejoined the fleet, the tension was palpable, a silent promise of violence to come. The crew was a whirl of activity, adrenaline pushing them past the point of exhaustion. Jax clapped Rin on the back, grinning. "You did it, Grease Monkey." "I knew you could. Save the congratulations," Rin replied, wiping his hands on a rag. "We're not dead yet, but if those Zarneth bastards catch up to us, I'll be the first to volunteer for the airlock." Thalia rolled her eyes, stepping into the fray. "Let's not start spacing ourselves just yet. We've got work to do." Vera was at her post, eyes glued to the tactical screen. "The Zarneth are moving in. They're not waiting for tea and biscuits." "Good," Thalia replied, her voice hardening to steel. "Let's give them a welcome they won't forget." With the ship humming beneath her feet and her crew beside her, Thalia knew they were about to dance the fine line between victory and obliteration. The Zarneth had underestimated them once, and that was a mistake they wouldn't live to regret. "All ships prepare to engage," Thalia commanded, her voice slicing through the air like a blade. "This is where we draw the line." The Zephyr and its makeshift allies surged forward, a ragtag armada ready to hold the line against the encroaching void. With her heart pounding and resolve like iron, Thalia knew one thing for certain: humanity would not go quietly. The battle came at them like a freight train, fast and unrelenting. The Zarneth ships were sleek, menacing shadows that danced through the void with a predatory grace. The Zephyr, patched and battered, was the underdog in a fight that had no room for mercy. Rin was back in the engine room, coaxing every ounce of power he could from the beleaguered systems. He was sweating bullets, his mind racing faster than the ship's engines. "Come on, you rust bucket," he growled, slamming a fist against the console. "Give me something to work with here." The ship, in a rare moment of compliance, surged with renewed vigor, the engines roaring to life with a ferocity that matched Rin's own desperation. "That's more like it," he grinned, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "Let's show these bastards what we're made of." On the bridge, Thalia was barking orders, her voice a steady anchor amidst the chaos. "Vera, target their lead ship. Jax, keep our flanks covered. We can't afford to let them box us in." "On it, Captain," Vera replied, her eyes sharp and focused. The tactical display lit up with a flurry of activity as the Zephyr's weapons locked onto their target. Jax was in his element, hands flying over the controls with a grace that belied his usual laid-back demeanor. "We've got incoming, Captain. They're not exactly rolling out the red carpet." "Then let's crash the party," Thalia replied, her voice cold and unyielding. "All weapons, fire at will." The void exploded into a kaleidoscope of destruction as the Zephyr's weapons unleashed their fury. The Zarneth ships danced through the barrage, their sleek forms weaving through the chaos with an unsettling ease. Despite the odds, the Zephyr held its ground, a stubborn defiance etched into its very hull. Though outnumbered and outgunned, the crew fought with a tenacity that bordered on madness. For Thalia, the battle was a blur of adrenaline and desperation. Every move was calculated, every decision a gamble. Yet in the midst of the chaos, she found comfort in the familiar rhythm of command. "Rin, status report," Thalia called, her voice cutting through the din of battle. "We've got full power to the engines," Rin replied, his voice crackling over the intercom. "But we're running hot. If we push any harder, we'll be cooking dinner on the reactor." "Keep it together, Rin," Thalia replied, her voice steady. "We're almost through this." Vera was a whirlwind of efficiency, her fingers dancing over the controls with a precision that was both impressive and terrifying. "Target destroyed, Captain, but we've got more incoming." Thalia nodded, a grim satisfaction settling over her. They were holding their own, but the Zarneth were relentless, a tide that threatened to swallow them whole. "Keep up the pressure," she ordered, her voice a steady drumbeat. We can't let them overwhelm us. Despite the odds, the crew rallied, their determination unyielding. In the midst of the chaos, they found strength in each other, a bond forged in the crucible of battle. As the battle raged on, Thalia knew that their survival was far from guaranteed. But she also knew that they would fight to the last breath, defying the void and the darkness that sought to claim them. In the end, it wasn't about victory or defeat. It was about defiance, about standing against the tide and refusing to be swept away. And in that defiance, they found their strength, their resolve, and their hope. As the battle drew to a close, the Zephyr limped through the void, battered but unbroken. The Zarneth had been repelled, but the cost had the battle had left the Zephyr looking like a junkyard's worst nightmare. But hey, it was still floating. That counted for something, right? Somewhere in the universe, an intergalactic insurance agent was probably weeping over the paperwork this little adventure would spawn. The bridge was a mess of tangled wires and flickering displays, the once pristine consoles now resembling a toddler's art project gone horribly wrong. Thalia surveyed the chaos with a steely gaze, her mind a whirlwind of calculations and half-formed plans. They needed an edge, and they needed it fast. "Rin," Thalia called into the comm. "How's our overgrown toaster holding up?" Rin's voice crackled through the speakers, laced with the kind of exasperation that only an engineer can muster when faced with a ship more temperamental than a diva on opening night. "Still purring, Captain, but it's more of a death rattle at this point. We're one misstep away from becoming a very expensive shooting star. Well, do your best to keep us in one piece." "I prefer not to die in a blaze of glory just yet," Thalia replied, the hint of a smile tugging at her lips despite the dire situation. Vera was hunched over her console, eyes narrowed in concentration as she sifted through the remnants of the Zarneth's calm chatter. "You know, I think I've found something," she muttered, more to herself than to anyone in particular. "Care to share with the class, Vera?" Jax asked, lounging back in his seat with the kind of nonchalance only he could muster in the face of imminent doom. "I'm picking up on. Let's call it Zarneth's playlist," Vera said, a glint of mischief in her eyes. "Their comms use a network protocol that seems less fortified than their ships. It's like they spent all their effort on making their ships look cool and none on securing their comms, so a vulnerability." Thalia's tone was hopeful yet cautious, like a gambler eyeing a loaded dice. "Exactly," Vera confirmed. "If we can exploit it, we might be able to disrupt their communications, so a little chaos." "Chaos is our specialty," Jax chimed in, grinning like a cat who'd found the cream. "Let's give those Zarneth scumbags a taste of their own medicine." Rin, having overheard the conversation, cut in with his own brand of skepticism. "Great. But how do we pull this off without frying what's left of our systems? We're already running on fumes." Details, Jax waved off Rin's concern with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "We've got the best engineer in this quadrant. If anyone can make it work, it's you." Rin let out a long-suffering sigh, but there was a spark of determination in his eyes. "Fine, I'll see what I can do. Just don't expect miracles. Miracles went out of stock a long time ago," Thalia said, her voice tinged with dry humor. "But I'll take a Hail Mary play." With a renewed sense of purpose, the crew dove into action. Rin vanished back into the bowels of the ship, muttering something about duct tape and prayer as he went. Vera and Jax worked together, fingers flying over the controls as they plotted their next move. The atmosphere was tense, but it was the kind of tension that felt like a live wire, crackling with energy and potential. Even in the midst of chaos, Thalia felt a glimmer of hope. They had a chance, however slim, to turn the tide. "All right, people," Thalia said, her voice clear and commanding. "Let's make these bastards regret ever messing with humanity." Deep in the guts of the Zephyr, Rin was doing his best impression of a one-man orchestra, juggling wires and circuits like an over-caffeinated juggler at a circus. The engine room was a cacophony of hisses and bangs, the ship protesting every tweak and adjustment. "Come on, you bucket of bolts," Rin muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. Let's show those Zarneth pricks what we're made of. The ship, as if sensing his resolve, seemed to steady under his touch, the engines purring with a begrudging compliance. It wasn't pretty, but it would have to do. "Rin, you holding up down there?" Thalia's voice crackled through the intercom, her tone steady despite the storm brewing around them. "Still here, Captain," Rin replied, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "I've rerouted power from non-essential systems. We've got enough juice to pull this off, assuming the ship doesn't decide to take early retirement. Good to hear. We need all the power we can muster for this. No pressure but the fate of the crew, and you know humanity might just rest on our shoulders." "No pressure at all then," Rin laughed, a short, sharp sound that held more resolve than humor. "Let's get this show on the road." Back on the bridge, Vera and Jax were preparing for the big moment, their eyes glued to the tactical display. The Zarneth ships loomed on the screen, a reminder of just how high the stakes were. "Ready, Vera?" Thalia asked, her voice a steady anchor amidst the storm. "As I'll ever be," Vera replied, her fingers hovering over the controls. "Let's light them up." "Jax, keep us steady," Thalia ordered, her gaze never wavering from the display. "We'll need every ounce of maneuverability once this thing kicks off." "You got it, Captain," Jax said, his usual laid-back demeanor replaced with a rare seriousness. With a nod from Thalia, Vera activated the calm disruption program they'd cobbled together from a mix of desperation and ingenuity. It was a Hail Mary, a last-ditch effort that could either save their lives or seal their doom. For a moment, the bridge was silent, the crew holding their breath as they waited for something, anything, to happen. Then, like a symphony of chaos, the Zarneth communications erupted into disarray. The tactical display showed their enemy ships veering off course, communications turning into a chaotic mess of static and garbled commands. "They're scrambling," Vera shouted, a grin spreading across her face. "It's working." "Not to sound cocky," Jax quipped, his eyes shining with adrenaline, "but I think we just became their worst nightmare." "Don't get too comfortable," Thalia warned, though her own smile betrayed her confidence. "They'll adapt quickly. We need to make this count." With the Zarneth in disarray, the Zephyr and its ragtag allies seized the opportunity, launching a counterattack that was as bold as it was reckless. They didn't have superior firepower, but they had something just as valuable: resolve. "Rin, we need full power to weapons," Thalia ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "On it, Captain," Rin replied, his fingers dancing over the controls as he coaxed more power from the engines. The Zephyr surged forward, a missile of defiance aimed squarely at the heart of the Zarneth fleet. The crew worked in concert, each member a vital cog in the machine of resistance. "Target their engines," Vera directed, her eyes gleaming with fierce determination. "Let's see how they like being on the back foot." As the Zephyr's weapons unleashed their fury, Thalia felt the weight of leadership settle more comfortably on her shoulders. This was what they'd trained for, what they'd bled for. In this moment, they were more than just a ship and a crew. They were a force of nature. The Zarneth ships faltered, their sleek forms struggling to regain cohesion in the face of the Zephyr's unexpected assault. It was a battle of attrition, of willpower clashing against technology. In the end, it was the Zephyr's ragtag tenacity that won the day. The Zarneth, unprepared for the ferocity of the counterattack, began to retreat, their arrogance shattered. The bridge erupted into cheers, the tension of the battle giving way to a wave of relief and camaraderie. They'd done it. They'd defied the odds and lived to tell the tale. "Looks like we sent them packing," Jax said, his grin wide and unabashed. "Guess they're not as tough as they look." Vera, her own smile tempered with caution, nodded. "Let's not celebrate too early. They'll be back, and next time they'll be ready." Thalia, her mind already moving to the next challenge, nodded in agreement. "True. But for now, we've earned ourselves a moment of respite. Let's make the most of it." As the Zephyr limped through the void, battered but unbroken, Thalia allowed herself a moment to appreciate the strength of her crew. They'd faced down the darkness and come out the other side, a little more battered but far from beaten. "All right, people," she said, her voice carrying a note of pride. Let's get this ship back in working order. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and I plan on winning this war. With renewed determination, the crew set to work, their spirits buoyed by the taste of victory. They were a long way from home, but they weren't alone. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with, and they'd face whatever came next with the same grit and defiance that had carried them this far. For now, it was enough. The Zephyr limped through the void, its engines wheezing like a geriatric asthmatic, but its crew alive and kicking. Thalia stood on the bridge, surveying the damage with the kind of calm usually reserved for people too stupid to realize the danger they were in. Lucky for her, she was well aware of their predicament and had just the right attitude about it. "Looks like we've got some breathing room," Thalia called out, stealing a glance at Vera, who was busy monitoring the Zephyr's tactical systems with a focus that suggested she might actually be enjoying herself. "Breathing room. This is more like a hiccup in the apocalypse," Vera said without looking up. Her fingers danced over the console, tuning into the chaos they'd just unleashed on the Zarneth fleet. It sounded like someone had cranked the volume on an orchestra tuning up and then shot the conductor. Jax leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head. "Well, we can't let them have all the fun. Time to rally the troops. Anybody got a megaphone?" Rin's voice crackled through the intercom, still audibly entangled in the ship's guts. "I could rig something up, but it might explode." "Then again, what doesn't on this ship? Optimism, Rin," Thalia said, grinning. "It's what separates us from the Zarneth." "I thought it was the opposable thumbs," Rin deadpanned. A loud clang sounded from his end. "Hold on, looks like the coffee maker's gone rogue again." Vera turned from her screen, her smirk a mirror of Thalia's own. "So about rallying those other factions." Jax, now upright, was already flipping through the ship's comm channels. "Let's see. Pirates, mercenaries, a couple of disgruntled retirees with a beef against Zarneth. Ah, here we go." He hit a button, and the voice of Fleet Command crackled into life, as warm and welcoming as a bear trap. "Zephyr, what the hell's going on out there?" "Just having a little party," Thalia replied, keeping her tone light. "Thought we'd extend the invite." "Well, your party's drawing a lot of attention," Fleet Command growled. "You've got other human factions curious." "Curious, huh?" Thalia mused. "Let's turn that into something more actionable. Patch me through to the orbital defenses." Jax worked his magic, his fingers flying across the controls. "Patching you through now, Captain." He winked at her. "Give him your best sales pitch." The intercom buzzed, and Thalia took a deep breath. "Attention all human factions and friendly ships. This is Captain Thalia Strait of the Zephyr. We've found a way to disrupt Zarneth communications, and it's working. We've got them on the back foot, but we need backup to make this count." She let the words hang in the air, waited for a response. It came, a gruff voice crackling with static. "This is Captain Merc of the Rebellion's Edge. Heard you put a kink in the Zarneth's shiny armor. We're in." Another voice, this one smoother, more refined. "This is Commander Laraine of the Starborn Coalition. We'll join your merry band." Soon, a chorus of confirmations rang out, the collective agreement of misfit bands of humanity coming together for a common cause. For a brief moment, the galaxy didn't seem so hopeless after all. "Looks like we've got ourselves an army," Jax said, clearly pleased with the outcome. "And here I thought we'd be fighting this war with 2 paperclips and a rubber band." Vera snorted. "Don't forget the duct tape." The Zephyr's comms array buzzed with chatter as the ragtag fleet of allies began to coordinate. Thalia felt the weight of responsibility press down on her shoulders, but it was the kind of weight that made her stand taller. "All right, people," she said, projecting her voice across the bridge. "It's time to show the Zarneth just what humanity can do when we stop squabbling and start working together." Rin, sounding slightly out of breath, chimed in. "Everything's rigged and ready, Captain. Just try not to vaporize us in one shot." "Your confidence is inspiring," Thalia replied dryly. "Vera, target the Zarneth's lead ships. Let's give them a taste of what they've been dishing out." Vera's fingers flew over the console, and she grinned like a kid in a candy store. "Targets locked, ready to unleash hell." On my mark, Thalia said, feeling the adrenaline course through her veins. This was it, the moment where everything could tip one way or another. The battle that followed was less of an elegant dance and more of a barroom brawl, the kind where everyone leaves with a few more bruises than they came in with. The Zarneth, caught off guard by the sudden unity of human forces, struggled to adapt. The Zephyr and its allies swarmed like angry hornets, their ships darting and weaving through the void with reckless abandon. It was chaos, but it was their chaos, and that made all the difference. Rin, give us every ounce of power you can squeeze out of those engines, Thalia ordered, her eyes glued to the tactical display. Consider it done, Rin replied, and the Zephyr surged forward like a prizefighter looking for a knockout punch. Vera unleashed the Zephyr's arsenal, her aim true and merciless. The Zarneth ships shuddered under the impact, their once imposing silhouettes now riddled with the scars of battle. As the Zephyr's fleet pressed the advantage, Thalia could feel the tide turning. The Zarneth were still formidable, but their arrogance had been their undoing. They'd underestimated what a cornered animal could do when it had nothing left to lose. Captain Merk, target their flanks, Thalia ordered, her mind working at a fever pitch. Let's cut off their retreat. On it, Merk replied, his ship veering to the side as it unleashed a barrage of firepower. The Zarneth, desperately trying to regroup, found themselves penned in by human ships on all sides. Their communications were still a tangled mess, their once precise maneuvers now haphazard and disjointed. Looks like they're running out of tricks, Jax observed, his voice laced with satisfaction. Let's keep the pressure on, Thalia said, though she allowed herself the briefest smile. We can't let up until they're done for. The battle raged on, each moment an eternity as the Zephyr's crew poured everything they had into the fight. It was gritty, brutal, and far from a foregone conclusion, but human tenacity was a force to be reckoned with. Slowly, agonizingly, the Zarneth fleet began to buckle under the strain. Their sleek ships, once so awe-inspiring, now looked battered and broken, their retreat a hasty scramble to avoid total annihilation. We're pushing them back, Vera shouted, her voice filled with a fierce triumph. Keep it up, Thalia urged, her heart pounding with the thrill of the fight. We're almost there. With one final, desperate push, the combined human forces broke the Zarneth's line. The alien ships, their formations shattered, began to retreat, limping through the void like beaten dogs. The bridge erupted in cheers, the tension of the battle giving way to a wave of relief and elation. Thalia allowed herself a moment to bask in the victory, knowing full well that the war was far from over. Looks like they've finally learned what humanity is capable of, Jax quipped, his grin wide and infectious. Vera, her own smile tempered with caution, nodded. They'll be back and they'll be smarter next time. But for now, we've earned ourselves a moment of peace, Thalia said, her voice carrying a note of pride. Let's make it count. As the Zephyr and its allies regrouped, the human factions exchanging congratulatory messages and promises of continued cooperation, Thalia felt a renewed sense of purpose. They'd faced down the darkness and come out stronger for it. All right, everyone, she said, her gaze sweeping over her crew with a mix of gratitude and resolve. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. This victory is just the beginning. With renewed determination, the crew set to work, their spirits buoyed by the taste of victory. They'd proven that humanity could stand together, and that was a force that even the Zarneth would have to reckon with. For now, it was enough. The Zephyr limped through the void, a punch-drunk brawler staggering towards the final bell. The battle was over, but the aftermath was just beginning, and the ship wore its scars like a veteran with no shame left to spare. Captain Thalia Strait stood on the bridge, surveying the damage. The place looked like a scrapyard with ambition. Rin's voice crackled over the intercom, the background noise of sparking wires and clanging tools a constant reminder of the state of affairs. Well, Captain, the good news is the engines are still in one piece. And the bad news? Thalia asked, her voice dry as a desert planet. They are in one piece the way a puzzle is after a toddler gets hold of it. Charming, Jack said from his seat, flipping through a tablet that looked as if it had seen better days or maybe just fewer of them. How about comms? Can we at least talk to someone without sounding like we're gargling nails? Working on it, Rin replied. Might have to sacrifice another coffee maker to the gods of technology. Careful, Jax warned. That machine's the only thing keeping us from open mutiny. Vera snorted from her station, her gaze still fixed on the tactical display as if daring it to blink first. Mutiny? Please. We're all too tired to even contemplate a proper coup. Thalia shook her head, a smile creeping onto her face despite everything. Let's focus on fixing this mess so we can gloat later. Jack stretched, cracking his neck with a series of pops that echoed across the bridge like gunfire. So, what's the plan, Captain? More importantly, does it involve fewer death traps? Depends, Thalia replied. We've got to coordinate with the other factions to start repairs on the orbital ring. Make sure everyone knows who's in charge before we end up with a friendly fire incident. Right, Jack said, leaning back in his chair. Because nothing says teamwork like a bunch of armed ships trying to play nice. The comms sputtered to life, a voice coming through that was far too chipper given recent events. Captain Merck here. Glad to see you're still flying, Zephyr. We've got teams ready to assist with repairs on the orbital ring. Thalia nodded, even though Merck couldn't see her. We appreciate the help, Merck. Let's make sure the Zarneth don't get another shot at it. Agreed, Merck replied. We'll coordinate with the Starborn Coalition to ensure coverage over the critical sectors. Jax leaned towards Thalia, his voice low. Should be interesting seeing them all play nice. Like herding cats with lasers. Think of it as a learning experience, Thalia said, shooting him a sideways glance, for everyone involved. Vera finally tore her gaze from the screens, her expression a mix of satisfaction and caution. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and I don't just mean fixing what's broken. Thalia nodded, her mind already racing through the logistics. Right. We need to rebuild those alliances. Make sure everyone understands that this isn't just about one battle, it's about the war. Rin's voice piped in again, sounding marginally less stressed. If you're expecting miracles, Captain, you might want to lower your bar, maybe to knee level. I'll take what I can get, Rin, Thalia replied, her tone wry. And if that includes a functioning ship, all the better. Jax grinned, his earlier cynicism momentarily giving way to genuine enjoyment. Look at us, the great unifeers of humanity. Who'd have thought? Certainly not us, Vera quipped. But we might as well run with it. The comms buzzed again, this time with the more refined voice of Commander Laraine. Zephyr, Starborn Coalition here. We're ready to assist in the reconstruction efforts. Just say the word. Thalia exchanged a look with Jax, who gave her a nod. Commander Laraine, good to have you on board. Let's get started. We'll need every pair of hands we can muster. The bridge descended into the organized chaos of coordination, with Thalia and her crew acting as the nerve center for a rapidly unfolding operation. Ships began to dock at the orbital ring, their crews pouring out to assess the damage and start repairs. It was a patchwork effort, the kind that relied heavily on duct tape, sheer willpower, and the occasional prayer to whatever deities watched over fools and madmen. Captain, Rin's voice came through again, now notably more upbeat. I've managed to jury-rig a temporary comms setup. It's not pretty, but it'll do. I'm not asking for pretty, Thalia said, a hint of admiration in her voice. Just functional. Then you're in luck, Rin replied. Because that's exactly what you've got. Jax leaned back, his fingers tapping idly against the console. You know, I'm almost starting to believe we might pull this off. Almost. Careful, Vera warned. Optimism is a slippery slope. Right, Jax said with a mock salute. Wouldn't want to get too comfortable. Might actually enjoy ourselves. Thalia chuckled, the sound a welcome respite from the tension that had gripped them for so long. Let's keep our eyes on the prize, folks. We've got an orbital ring to fix, and a galaxy to remind why you don't mess with humanity. The work continued, the crews pushing themselves to exhaustion as they pieced together the shattered remains of the orbital defenses. It was slow, painstaking work, but each completed section brought them closer to a semblance of security and stability. As the Zephyrs crew coordinated the efforts, Thalia found herself reflecting on the lessons learned. They'd faced a formidable enemy, and despite the odds, they'd held their ground. It was a testament not just to their resolve, but to the indomitable spirit of humanity itself. "We're making progress," Vera reported, her voice tinged with both exhaustion and satisfaction. "The orbital defenses are coming together." "Slowly but surely." "Good," Thalia replied, allowing herself a moment of cautious optimism. "Keep at it, we're not done yet." Jax rolled his shoulders, the fatigue evident in his movements. "So, Captain, what's next? After we're done playing space mechanics, I mean." "Next," Thalia said, her gaze firm and unyielding, "we make sure the Zarneth understand that this isn't over." "Not by a long shot." Jax grinned, the familiar mischief returning to his eyes. "I like it. Reckon they'll be in for a surprise when they realize just how stubborn we can be." Vera smirked, a glint of determination in her eyes. "Let them come. We'll be ready." As the Iors dragged on, the repairs continued with dogged persistence. The orbital ring slowly regained its dignity, its defenses bolstered and its systems restored to working order. The combined efforts of the human factions, once disparate and fragmented, now stood as a singular force against the encroaching darkness. "Captain," Merrick's voice cut through the static, breaking the cycle of work and worry. "We've completed the repairs on the eastern quadrant." "Should hold for now." "Good work, Merrick," Thalia replied, her voice carrying the gratitude she felt. "We'll need every advantage we can get." "Don't mention it," Merrick said with a gruff laugh. "After all, we're all in the same boat now." Jack sighed, his expression a mix of relief and tired amusement. "Let's just hope this boat doesn't spring any more leaks. Or explode," Rin added helpfully, his own exhaustion laced with humor. "Seems to be a theme with us." "Let's avoid that particular development," Thalia said, her tone light despite the tension. "I'd rather not add space debris to our list of accomplishments." The comms crackled again, this time with Larane's voice weaving through the static. "Zephyr, Commander Larane here. We've stabilized the northern defenses. Should give the Zarneth something to think about." "Thank you, Commander," Thalia said, her respect for the coalition growing with each passing moment. "We'll make sure they remember it." As the Iors dragged on into what felt like an endless cycle, the repairs continued with a gritty determination. The orbital ring, once a symbol of vulnerability, was slowly being transformed into a bulwark of defiance. Thalia watched the progress with a sense of satisfaction that was tempered with realism. They'd won a battle, but the war was far from over. The Zarneth had been sent packing, but they'd undoubtedly return with new strategies and renewed ferocity. "We'll be ready," Thalia murmured to herself, her gaze fixed on the flickering screens that displayed the fruits of their labor. "Whatever they throw at us, we'll be ready." Jax, overhearing her quiet declaration, leaned back in his chair with a grin. "And if we're not, we'll improvise. Seems to be our specialty." Vera nodded, her expression one of steely determination. "We've got this. One way or another, we'll hold the line." The bridge buzzed with activity, the crew working together with a unity that had been hard-won through shared hardship and struggle. It was a testament to the resilience of humanity, a stubborn refusal to back down in the face of adversity. As the repairs neared completion, Thalia allowed herself a moment to reflect on the journey they'd undertaken. They'd emerged from the darkness, and while the path ahead was far from clear, it was one they would forge together. "All right, everyone," Thalia said, her voice carrying a note of pride and resolve. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we've proven what we're capable of. Let's keep that momentum going." With renewed determination, the crew set to work, their spirits buoyed by the taste of victory and the promise of a future worth fighting for. They'd face down the darkness and come out stronger for it. For now, it was enough.